Hello. Hello. Welcome to the Dead Soon podcast. This feels really weird recording this right now, but this has been a long time coming, and yeah, let's just get into it. So, why am I actually creating a podcast? So, I've wanted to do this for years. I've always written it on my yearly goals. I've always wanted to. I've always researched it. I've always loved podcasts, but it's just been something that I was a little bit afraid to do. I would say mainly out of a fear of embarrassment. And honestly, the thought of like someone pulling up my podcast at like a pregame and just like blasting it on the speaker. I don't know why I've always had that as a little bit of a fear, but I'll get into more about the name of this podcast and why that's relevant and everything that I'm going to be getting into. I would say the biggest theme about that Dead Soon title is just I've gotten to the point of thinking that life is way too short to kind of just be scared to pursue something that I really want to pursue. And why would I stop myself from doing something just out of the fear of being embarrassed? I think I realized that sometimes I would do the same as some other people and make fun of someone pursuing something like, oh, you're making TikToks? Like, oh, you have a SoundCloud? Like, what are you doing? But in reality, I think it just comes from a place of jealousy at someone being able to put themselves out there. So if I've ever done that to anyone, then of course I apologize, because I'm putting myself out there, and it's scary. I've always prided myself on being very true to myself, and I think not doing this was doing myself a disservice. So I think this is just going to be a little bit of an experiment and just kind of see where this goes. I think this year has been the year that I've really decided to do it, because I actually recently finished a marathon, and it was something that I also had on my list for years and years and years. And I kind of just realized that I just needed to get started. So I actually started the training on January 1st. And I was very consistent with it, and it all went well. And I think it was an experience, and it taught me that I can do something as long as I just put continual effort towards it, and I set myself up for success. So I think that's how I'm going to try to approach this, with just consistency and kind of just being able to create a schedule. But yeah, I mean, maybe you know who I am, maybe you don't. I mean, you probably don't know that this is a dream of mine unless you're a select few people, but I've kind of just kept this to myself because I don't like saying something and then not actually doing it. But yeah, I mean, we'll just get into it, because I mean, I assume that most people who are listening right now at this moment in 2024, that you know me, your friend, family. But my name is Trevor. I'm 21 years old. I'm a college student right now, entering my senior year. I study advertising. And I would, if I'm giving myself a little bit of an intro, what do I like to do? What do I love to do? I love to talk to people. I love to run. I love to laugh. I love biographies. I love listening to podcasts. I love people, and I love hearing stories. I think that's been a theme of my life. So why don't I just get into the Dead Soon podcast name, because there's still be some more farther into this episode about that. But I would say the inspiration is from Steve Jobs' Stanford address. Stanford. And I'll just read it, this little snippet that I've pulled and I've kind of always had in the back of my mind, but it came back and resurfaced when I actually saw a picture of the quote written down. So here it is. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make all the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There's no reason not to follow your heart. I think this quote just hits so close to home, because I am someone has lived and continues to live a lot of time in a sense of like fear over death. And I think something that I need to wrap my head around, and I've really been working on, is that shouldn't be a fear. It should be something that I know is going to happen eventually, and obviously it's completely out of my control when that will happen. So I feel like I have to just do everything that I want to do, and I have to kind of just rush myself into things, because I don't want to ever live with a sense of regret. I know that I have to pursue what I want to pursue, because the worst thing I could ever really feel is regret. I don't want to be laying on my deathbed, or I don't want to be on the brink of death and being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't do something that I wanted to do. Because there is, as far as I know, there isn't a second chance at this. So this podcast is going to be a little bit all over the place at first. Obviously right now it is just me. I think format wise, my big picture, what I really want to explore is, I want this to be some interview based, some non-interview based. But I want to explore and kind of find out more about what people pursue and what they want to do, what they have on that bucket list, or what they really, really want to accomplish deep down, kind of digging deep into not just like, oh, I want to get this amount of money, I want to be famous, but like, what do you do and why do you do it? And I think through this experience, I'll be kind of figuring out if this is something that this podcasting is something that I love that much, because I've kind of fantasized and been like, oh my gosh, like I would love that so much, but I don't really know, and until I actually do it. But yeah, so I'll get into a little bit of backstory about the original name for this podcast, because it had a different name at first. Obviously, just a placeholder name. I had done a lot of thinking, and just while I've been at work, had a lot of downtime, just throughout my commutes and stuff. But the original name was Head North Podcast. And so it was wrapped around this concept of North, and the idea of like, what makes you keep going? What do you do when you're backed up against the wall? What do you do to keep yourself going? Kind of like the concept of a North Star, and that kind of idea of like, that I have, which is like, when in doubt, kind of just head north. And for me at this moment, it's just kind of been running, that I just can constantly pursue and work towards something. And the funny thing is, this was the original name. I actually created this whole like Spotify account under Head North, and then I saw that it was the name of a band, which I didn't think would be a major issue, but I didn't really want to be named the same as anything else. I wanted to kind of carve out this having its own name and its own identity, and I didn't want it to struggle with that. So obviously I'm still going to be kind of absorbing the ideas within that, but just so people kind of know why, or what this at first kind of was. So I guess I'll go over kind of what the vision is. This is going to be, I'm hoping for interviews. My podcast gear is not up to par with interviews currently, but I will try to make it work. Because when I bought a mic a while ago, it happens to be one that, if I'm looking for podcasting interviewing with two people in the same room, it doesn't really work for that. It was annoying looking it up, but it'll be interviews, kind of self checkups, maybe some like dissection of books or people or biographies, stuff like that. Going over events in my life. I have a couple in the chamber that I think are pretty big, and I think of like a couple friends that maybe listen to this, they might get some insight, and hopefully someone else can get some insight from it. Sort of reflection, and kind of just anything that I want to try out. So basically, we'll see. But I'm only going to do an episode about something or someone I find interesting or I'm passionate about. But when it comes to an interview, I'll just kind of be trying to highlight the uniqueness of someone I'm interviewing, becoming a better interviewer myself, because it is something that I really enjoy. I think listening to or watching the Netflix series, it's like My Next Guest Needs No Introduction or something. It's David Letterman just kind of interviewing people, and that was one of my first introductions to the idea of interviewing, like in that format. It was a very casual format, and it's like kind of just like interview celebrities, and just like I like his unconventional questioning, and I like how he kind of dives deep. But yeah, I mean, big picture, obviously, like I'm only 21 years old. I am very early in my life. I'm early in my career, but I want to grow as a person, kind of just uncover insights about people, and kind of get deep. I guess that maybe that can segue into like where I'm at in my life now. It's summer break right now. I'm entering the last week of my internship. I've been commuting to Manhattan for my internship. I've been working in advertising. And the commutes have been long. It's been a tiring summer, but I think this summer has shown me that I can do more than I thought I could do. I'm currently commuting. I'll leave the house at 6 a.m. and I'll be getting into the office around 8:45. So it's quite the journey. But I think it's really been a test of independence and a test of like, can I do this? And I still have managed to keep my running up, which has been my top priority because I think it's most important for my kind of sanity. But yeah, that's where I'm at now. I mean, I'll be going to school in the fall. I'll be entering my senior year, which is just crazy because sometimes I feel like I'm still 16. But yeah, I mean, that's my life now. It's been a long summer, but it also has kind of flown by because the days have been so filled with, I basically am just like, get up, run, shower, eat breakfast, and then I'm out the door, and then I'm getting home at like 8:15 at night, and then just kind of eat and shower, and then I'm in bed. So it's been very like not a lot of downtime to, but on weekends I've been doing big runs, but yeah, I'll get more into that. But I think one of the formats that I'll kind of be going into and styles I'll have is like in interviewing will be I have like a master sheet of questions. Like I love asking people questions. At school, if you're one of my friends at school, we play this game, Truth or Drink. Basically, just it ends up being just like not even truth or drink. It's just like truth and drink. But people just like will ask you like off the cuff questions where sometimes it'll be like in very like, oh, like that's awesome. But then sometimes it'll be like an insanely weird question. But I like when they get deep, and I like when you can get somewhere with people. So I'm gonna ask myself some of them right now, just because I think it's important to kind of set a foundation. And I think this would be cool to look back in the future, and maybe if I'm still doing this in a couple years, maybe I'll make this every year. I'll answer the same questions and kind of see how that goes, like that Billie Eilish interview that's on YouTube where they ask her the same questions every year. But I guess I kind of covered this one. But what do you do when you're in a slump, and like what's your north? For me, I would say it's getting active, getting out of the house, and talking to someone is another one. I think communicating is just obviously so important. It's obviously a cliche, but I need it. Like I need to talk to people. It's huge for me. I do love my independence, but when I want to work through something or something just feels off, it's always good to talk to someone. But if I'm not feeling that, then I mean, recently this past like year or so, I've been loving running, and it's a way to get my mind off things. It can be meditative. It can get your anger out. It can basically do anything. Then what am I working towards right now? This obviously can have a couple interpretations, but my biggest thing that I'm working towards is I'm training for a race on September 29th, 28th. It's a 50-kilometer ultra marathon. So I did run a marathon earlier this year. This is an ultra marathon. Ultra marathons are just anything above a marathon distance. This is 50 kilometers, so about 31 miles. So it's not that much more than a marathon. Marathon being 26 miles. But this is a trail running race. Something that I'm really looking forward to. I've been training. I think there's about 50 days until the race, but I've been doing big runs. I've been stringing together big running weeks, and with the work, it's been a lot. But it'll be nice to be done with work, to have a little bit more time for that. But yeah, I would say that's my big goal right now. And then big picture, I would say being more present. I think it's been a big struggle for me recently. Honestly, not even recently. My whole life I've struggled with this existentialism of like thinking about death, thinking about just like blowing things out of proportion and struggling with things that I can't control. And I need to realize that I just can't control a lot of things, and I need to be more present. And when things are going well, I need to embrace it. But when things are going bad, I need to also embrace it. I need to just be in the moment and appreciate life, because it's something so precious. And I mean, maybe this sounds cringy or whatever, but it's something precious. And I think I sometimes take things for granted, and I need to be more present and try to stress less. I know that's obviously way easier said than done, but I'm someone who stresses about death on like literally every day, all day, just constantly thinking about it. And I need to realize that a way to counteract that is just to keep moving forward and keep attacking and filling each day to the brim, obviously with what I can control, but filling each day with things I want to do, and I want to be happy. I want to end every day being like, okay, like this is what I did today. And then I would say lastly, being more compassionate. I guess I'm getting deep with myself through this podcast a little bit already, but I think I can lack compassion a lot, and I think it's been an issue for me. I think over the past couple years, I think I have gotten better. I guess I'll dive into, this question kind of opened up something that I've been doing this past 2 years. I've been doing kind of yearly themes. So in 2023, I started with, my theme was learning to love myself and learning what I really love to do, and really mental was the focus for myself, and prioritizing myself and making sure I'm not doing things I don't want to do. And then 2024 has been about physical discipline. I think that was more largely centered around the marathon. But I think these two kind of tie together into the things that I'm working on right now. So it does make me feel better. And just because I find that if I work on something like this, like if I do it for the whole year and I really focus on something, it kind of just becomes like a skill in my like inventory that I just always have. And I can continue to build and build and build. But I like having it as this like year, like fully focused on this one thing, because I tend to struggle focusing on multiple things at once. So I really need to drive something home to get it. Like I can be pretty slow picking stuff up. But this next question, why do I keep going? I guess I kind of talked about this a little bit, but I don't want to live with regret. I think that regret scares me, and I think it can be an inspiration, it can be a drive, but also it can haunt you a little bit. But I think a little bit of haunting can be good sometimes, as long as it's not too intense. Tying into that, I have this little snippet that I pulled. It was from a David Goggins interview. I mean, if you want to know more about David Goggins, look him up. A lot of people know who he is, but a lot of people might not. But he's just an unbelievable guy who's gone through unbelievable things, and he's one of the strongest people I've ever just seen anything about. Read his books, he's fantastic. But he has this little like story or like theoretical thing that he thinks about, which like is about regret. He basically says that if you're at heaven's gates and God is sitting there, and he shows you, he says your name and he starts listing off accomplishments, and let's say for me it's listing everything that I've ever wanted, and it's amazing. And then I say, that's not me, I haven't done that. And then God says back, oh, that's what you were supposed to be, that's what you could have been. And ever since I heard that, that has been such like it was a little bit of like a gut punch, and then it was also like a wow, like that is fantastic. That's I never want to not live up to what I can live up to. And obviously I don't want to push myself to the point of death or burning out so badly, but I think I need to I need to pursue what I want to pursue, and I need to live without regret. What's my real dream is the next question. I would say short term, I want to live with my girlfriend. I mean, as soon as possible would be awesome. Being away from her is very challenging, but I will see her soon. And then I would say to have a job that I enjoy is the second one. Just diving a little deeper into that. I think it scares me sometimes, and I think there's this thing in America that a lot of people will pursue things for money, which there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want. But I think sometimes people also get a little bit stuck in a job, and they'll just keep doing a job over and over and clocking in, clocking out, and it's something that they don't enjoy or even just that they hate. And the thought of that is honestly terrifying to me, and I think that's why I sometimes I think like, oh, like maybe I should have gone into an industry that was making some more money, but I know that at least for me, even if I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars, if I was doing something I don't like, I wouldn't be living. Like it would kill me. And I think that's the thing that I realized, and why I really wanted to pursue something that I love, and at least I want to have the ability to, if I don't like something, I want to be able to try something else. I think that, I guess that kind of revolves into the regret thing, and like, you really don't want to be like looking back and being like, wow, I spent 10 years at that job working 10-hour days and I didn't even like it. Like, that's, I'm not good at math, but that's a lot of percentage of your waking hours of your life. And then lastly, short term, I would just say to have hobbies that I love. I think I'm pretty good with this right now. I think things that I currently love to do, I mean, I guess I feel like I've talked about running 100 times, but it is pretty central to me. Running is a big one that I love. Reading has been on and off over the years, but my biggest central thing that I love to read are biographies. I struggle with fiction a little bit, but yeah, those are some hobbies that I enjoy. I mean, I hope this podcasting becomes a hobby that I just pick up, and this isn't something that I just like am pursuing, like being like, oh my gosh, like I wanna have the biggest podcast in the world. I think that's not even possible unless this is something that I truly love, and I want to figure that out. I mean, so far I've liked it. This is the first time I've ever recorded, and this has been a lot of clicking record and clicking stop over and over in the past couple weeks. But I'm glad that I'm doing it, and that I've kind of just forced myself to keep talking. I would say next, my next question that I have for myself is, what's the most outlandish goal that you have? And I have written down, back to running, I guess, again. If you hate running, you're going to hate this all, but to complete the Barkley Marathons is my biggest long-term goal. And I guess along with that would be to complete a 100-mile race. I mean, the Barkley Marathons are something that I would highly suggest. It's an ultra marathon. It's what many consider the hardest ultra marathon ever. There's so much to it that I don't want to do the injustice of not properly explaining everything. But essentially, it's a ridiculously tough, high elevation, super long ultra marathon race in Tennessee. And I would suggest watching on YouTube The Race That Eats Its Young. What a name to introduce you to it. And then Where Dreams Go to Die is the other one. It's just a race that it is just unbelievable to me, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about it, but actually there will be more on this later. But I would highly suggest watching those documentaries, especially if you want to have something to talk to me about, because I will talk about this stuff all day. Like, I love it. Then I'd say this doesn't fall under outlandish as much as the Barkley does, because that has 17 people have completed it in 40 years. But my next one is to have a podcast that I that I love, that I'm consistently posting on, that it just becomes like a second nature to me. I don't think that's necessarily outlandish, because I can just keep doing it and I will just eventually I can just keep doing it. I think ingraining it into my routine and having it just be something that like I'm open about and not embarrassed about, I think it's not outlandish, but it's a goal. The next section I have is what's a quote that you've been thinking about a lot recently? I love this question. I am the host, so I have chosen 2 quotes. So the first one is, "Comparison is the thief of joy," and I didn't realize this until recently, and I'm pretty embarrassed of myself because I'm a huge like president guy. But it's a Teddy Roosevelt quote, which I didn't even realize. And I also thought the quote was always, "Comparison is the killer of joy." But yes, this is a quote that this means so much to me. I think I've been guilty, as is everyone, I'm sure, just comparing everything. Like comparing, like someone will, I don't know, comparing money, comparing physical stuff, comparing health, comparing relationships. Like things aren't that simple. That's the big picture of this. I think that comparing is never gonna be a good thing. The biggest one for me is money. I mean, money is always a stressor. And I think there's just like no reason to really compare, because it doesn't do anything. I'd say running is another one. Back to running again. But I mean, running is such like a metrics based thing. It can be, with paces, with times, with heart rates, with everything, and it's hard, especially for someone like me who, like, I've been devouring ultramarathon content and doing so much research. Like I've been loving it. Like I track all my runs. I have like spreadsheets. It's a whole thing. But trying not to compare, because people have different genetics. People have been doing this for different amounts of time. I've really been taking running like very seriously since January 1st of this year, and I've seen myself make great progress. And I think it's something that I can't compare, because can't compare to other people, because there's people that have been running for 15 years and they're running like 6-minute miles at a jog, and that's what it takes. That's what I'm sprinting. And I think it's inspirational. It shouldn't be something that I compare. It is inspirational just because I can look at that and be like, okay, if I work hard enough, like, I can keep going. And there isn't really a ceiling to all of it, which I do appreciate and I like. But yeah, I guess back to the quote. Health too. I mean, kind of everything. Like, comparing is almost never good. Like, everything is so different. Like, I don't know, like, people compare relationships, people compare parents, people compare everything, and I've been guilty of a lot of comparing, and I think this quote is something that I can keep looking back on. The second one is, I guess it's kind of weird, but I say it's a self-quote because I just like think about it a lot, and I've been trying to drive it home with myself. I'm sure someone else has said it before, but it goes as, "I've changed so everyone else is capable." I think this is, oh my gosh, this is massive. I've been someone who's been not very forgiving, and not very compassionate, and I can think I can be a little bit harsh sometimes. And it's something that I'm definitely working on. I think it has helped me in some regards, but I think sometimes it has burned some bridges, and sometimes it can be a little bit abrupt with things. And if I look back at just these past like 3 years, I think I've changed so much. Like since high school, like the amount of change that I know that I've gone through, and I see myself as a totally different person. Like I look back at myself in high school, and I'm not like, oh, but like I'm like, wow, like I was so different, and I was so unhappy, and I really didn't like myself for a lot of the day most of the time. And now I'm happy. I love myself, and I think it's not fair of me to treat other people as if they are the same as when they did whatever they did to make me upset. Like if it was a freshman year of college, like it's fine. I mean, obviously there are exceptions to everything, but I have to be a believer in this because it's not fair of me to say that other people aren't capable of change, because I know that I've changed, and I know that I have, and it's important to me to allow other people to have the opportunity to change and for me to forgive. I think that's something that I'm definitely working on. I guess that falls into the compassion thing. The next one is, this is just kind of, by the way, just kind of random ones that I'll be going back to in the show. But just, I guess this is kind of like people learning more about me, and if I'm going to be hosting the show, I want people to know about me, so this can kind of be like a baseline that they can listen to and understand me a little bit better. Especially because I think a lot of people, I mean, I have friends and that probably don't know a lot of this stuff about me, and maybe this will provide some insight. Maybe this will inspire them to do something that they love and pursue something that they've always wanted to. But next is, what part of your life is most important to your happiness? And I would say number one is just being able to be with my girlfriend. I think it's something that is so amazing and so important to my happiness. And right now we are long distance over the summers, with her living pretty far away, but we do go to school together. But yeah, it's challenging being away from her, and I think that's something that's very important to my happiness. And then the second one, I'm sure you can guess it. It is running right now, and just, I guess, being able to work out and being able to consistently get outside and have the time to even work out is something that's awesome, and I love. And it's been very important to my happiness. And I think throughout the summer, making it work and fitting it in, like, I didn't think that I'd be able to make it work, and I've been able to get in like 10-ish hours of training a week with this hectic schedule, which has been awesome. And I think it's just a testament to like how much I really do enjoy it, because if I didn't like it, like, I can't go to the gym. Like, I've tried. I mean, I can force myself to, but I'm sure many people can relate. Like, if you don't enjoy it even a little bit, it's so hard to do. And I think that's why I've been able to just, like, if this was something that I didn't enjoy, I wouldn't be getting up early and doing it. And this is more of a lighter question, but kind of, this will be fun to, I guess, if I listen back in the future. But what are you reading, listening, watching recently? I would say podcasts. Very recently, I've been listening to Founders, which is a podcast where it kind of just ties into the exact things that I like. Which is like a guy. It's a guy, I don't remember the host name. Sorry, I think his name's David something. But he reads biographies of like founders and just like very important figures and successful people, and he kind of just like pulls his notes about them, and it's amazing. Like, he gets so deep, and I love that he's not afraid to repeat a book and do like 6 episodes on it. Like, I love it. I love that he can pull new things from anything. I'd say next, Kill Tony. I know it's a show that's been around for like a decade, but I only found it like 6 months ago. It's just so funny. Like, I love it's basically like a stand-up, like a show where it's a comedy show where random people from the audience can put their name in a bucket and they'll get pulled up to do a minute of stand-up, and sometimes they're hilarious, but then sometimes they're terrible. Which sometimes, I mean, it is funnier watching them bomb, but I know that is something that's so difficult. But it's a hilarious show. I'd say also Matt and Shane's secret podcast. It's Shane Gillis and Matt McCusker. It's a hilarious podcast. The Yvonne's podcast, I love. I do love it. I love a good interview podcast, and his interviews are hilarious. I love that he has had people on, like a lot of people only have celebrities on. Like, he'll have celebrities on, like he'll have Ed Sheeran on, but then he'll have like a New York City garbage man on, and it's just like they have, like, I love that he can have anyone on. Book-wise, I'm reading Grant, which is a biography of Ulysses Grant, which is like the longest book ever, and I love it, but it's a little hard to get through sometimes. And then Hunger Games. It's the broad category because I'm currently reading Mockingjay, rereading, and listening to the audiobook of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is actually currently my favorite movie. Like, I thought that movie was fantastic, and I had never actually read the book. I had a free Audible trial, so I was like, I mean, let's just get the audiobook going. So I do have 3 going at once, which is a little much, but surprisingly, I'm able to not get them very confused. Then TV wise, House of the Dragon just finished season 2 last night. Won't spoil anything, but hopefully when I do next year's check-in, the show will be coming out soon. Hopefully it doesn't take them 2 years to do. But yeah, and I'm also, I mean, I watch YouTube videos, stuff like that, but TV wise, I literally just today was watching, it's a documentary series about Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it's awesome. I mean, actually the Founders podcast, like, I listened to an episode on Arnold a week or 2 ago, and it was so eye-opening. Like, I thought it was awesome, and I just happened to see this TV show on Netflix, and I was like, oh, let me give it a listen. I mean, let me give it a watch. But one episode in, it's awesome. My last of, like, the main questionings is, what are you bad at? And I think it's an interesting one because my thing that I've been thinking a lot about, and I don't think it's a weakness at all, because my answer is, like, being passionate in multiple categories, and I think that ties into, like, that yearly theme thing, how difficult it is for me to do multiple things at once, and to kind of make myself do things. Like, it's really hard. Like, if I'm doing a project at school that I don't enjoy, like, I'll get through it and I'll suffer through it, but I'm not good at doing something that I'm not passionate about. And I think it's a gift most of the time, but sometimes it can be a curse, and sometimes it can annoy me because I'll be like, I want to do more things and I want to be interested in more things, but I just, like, I can't do something that I don't like. And then I guess this ties back to one of my one of the previous questions about, like, what am I bad at, but I think I can overstress about the future, and I really want to work on that. And then my dream podcast guest. This will be awesome because maybe if I keep doing this, maybe one day I'll actually have him on the podcast. But I'll do a little bit of dive into each, but I won't go much in. Maybe in the future I'll do an episode just, like, talking about them and kind of going in depth and explaining things. My first one I have mentioned, David Goggins. I've assigned each person a kind of word to describe him. His word is unbreakable. He has an unbelievable story, and I won't try to tell the whole thing, and I would recommend reading his books because they're unbelievable. But he essentially just had an insanely difficult, terrible childhood, and he was basically set up for failure in all regards, and he, through his own willpower and just, like, forcing his way through things, he became a Navy SEAL. He did Army Ranger School. He did so much. He did so much stuff through, like, insane injuries, through sickness. Like, he had an awful heart condition. Then he graduated, and then he finished. I believe it was after he retired. I'm not sure on the timeline, but he started doing ultramarathons, which is another intro to ultramarathons for me. And he just kind of wanted to sign up for one on a whim, and he was told, like, oh, you need to complete a 100-mile race to even get into this race. So then, like, a month or 2 late, I don't know the exact time, but, like, pretty soon after, he just, like, signed up for a 100-mile or a 24-hour race where he just needed to run 100 miles to qualify, and it was on a track. And he went there with his, like literally, like, Gatorade and, like, a little bit of snacks, and he crushed 100 miles in, like, I don't know, like 20 hours, 18 hours or something. Unbelievable feat for someone who, like, hadn't really ran a lot. Obviously, he was, like, a Navy SEAL. He was in great shape, very muscular, but, like, this was a ridiculous feat, like, that he, like, ended it, like, in, like, awful condition, but everything in his book is just so inspiring. He's fantastic. He's unbelievable. Next is Gary Cantrell, also known as Lazarus Lake. He's the creator of those Barkley Marathons, and once again, I would just watch the documentary because it is fantastic. But he's the creator of the Barkley and a lot of other ultramarathon races. The Barkley is just extremely unconventional, and that is my word for him also, unconventional. Because he created something so unique and so unlike anything else, and with the one goal of basically creating something at the tip of human ability, and he'll change the race over the years to make it harder, to make sure it's just at that peak. And he's someone that I love the stuff that he does. It's awesome, and I'd love to have him on, and I'd love to just have a conversation with him. Next has been a hero of mine basically my entire life, ever since I got a jersey of his a long time ago. I don't even know when, it's been a long time, but Messi. And my word for him is passionate. Just watching him play, especially most recently in the Qatar 2022 World Cup, he was unbelievable. It was watching him, especially in the final, just his unwillingness to lose it's something fantastic. He's always been an inspiration for me. I've always loved him. He's always, if you know me, you know I love Messi. He's unbelievable. And my word for him is passionate. I think, especially seeing him grow as a player later as he's gotten older, he's become I feel like he's become an even more mature player, even more composed, and it's passion. It's fantastic. I think this is a dream guest, but just seeing him off of media stuff, I don't think he loves that the format of interviews. Especially I don't think I've ever seen him do a long form. His main language is Spanish. He's in America. He's in the United States now, so maybe he has better English now. But that would be an awesome one. I think it would be a little bit funny because I don't think he would love it. But I guess that's probably the hardest guest to ever get. He is one of the most famous people in the world. The next one is Theo Von, who I also mentioned before. My word / 4 words with hyphens. One of a kind. He's a comedian. He hosts a podcast. He's hilarious. He tells the most insane stories. His life just seems like it's been a roller coaster of insane events, and he's someone that I would love to have a conversation with. This would be he's hilarious. There's not much else to say. He's very one of a kind, and if you want to see what he's like, just look up a YouTube of Theo Von podcast funniest moments. Hilarious. He's so funny. Next is Shane Gillis. This has been a more recent one when I watched his Netflix special. My word for him is American. In the funniest way possible. He just is just a dude. He's just, I couldn't really think of a great word, but I guess American is a good word, because I feel like he's just a stereotypical, just American dude, and he's also hilarious. Watch him listen to his podcast. He has some skits. He has a Netflix show called Tires. He has a special called Beautiful Dogs on Netflix. He's awesome, and we could bond over our love of U.S. history, because I know he's a big history guy, just in general, which he has a funny bit about in his special. Next are guests. These are people who are dead, but who I find inspiration in. The first one is Alexander Hamilton, which I have a funny story about this. I had heard of that there was the musicals. I'd read the book that it's based on. It's a biography. I kind of just picked it up and I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I knew him from being on the $10 bill. My word for him is hungry. I think he's a very inspirational person. He's led such an interesting life, or he did lead such an interesting life. So much stuff, so much craziness. And I don't know necessarily someone I'd look up to, but it is someone that he's flawed, and I think everyone is. He was flawed, but he was also brilliant. And he reading that biography was kind of my introduction to U.S. history, and has sparked such an interest for me. Then my final person, like, this would be, if he was still around, this would be like, this is the tippity top of the list. I also talked about him. He's also the origin of, a quote of his is the origin of this podcast, being Steve Jobs. My word is visionary, but I think there's so many more words to describe him. I think he's also someone who's flawed, and I think that's a good thing. I think he was so dedicated and unwilling to compromise on his product, being Apple. He started my interest in marketing. He's the reason I love Apple products. He's the reason I love branding. He's the reason for so many things. And if you want to get the full picture, I would read Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. It is a fantastic book, and I'm actually going to be rereading it soon, probably, because it's so good. And he's just fantastic. I love Apple as a company. I love the brand. I love their how committed they are to sticking to that brand. And yeah, I mean, he's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, the strand kind of connecting all these people, and something that I strive for, is that everyone here does things their own way. They have a clear vision of what they want. They're passionate. They focus. To me, they're like, they kind of epitomize that idea of like, they like not wanting to live with regret and really just doing something. And obviously some of them, they're very different. Like, it's funny, like, I know there's that theoretical that people, my parents, like, we'll talk to as a family and be like, oh, like, if you could have like 5 house or dinner guests of any dead or alive, like, I'm just imagining like a table of like Steve Jobs and Alexander Hamilton with like Shane Gillis and Theo Vaughn and like David Goggins, and like, it's just like, that would be a hilarious table, because like, I think it shows like the clashing of my interests that are, I think it's awesome that I have different interests, but it shows that clashing and difference, like this, the different sides of me, that I think sometimes I can be super serious, and I like Goggins is a super serious guy. I mean, he's awesome. And then like Alexander Hamilton and Steve Jobs being these like very ambitious, like business centric, like people like that seem more serious, and then just like comedians. And I think it's just, that'd be a fantastic dinner. But yeah, those are my main people. I think, yeah, I mean, they all kind of bring the idea that I kind of want to move towards, and I just love everything about all of them. And I think if any of them that are live would like to get on the podcast, that would be awesome. I think that would be just amazing. I mean, because I have so many little tidbits that I pulled from them, and that I gain inspiration from them, and they're all very interesting people, and I think I like that they kind of pulled together these different parts of my personality. But I guess wrapping up, I mean, I was not expecting myself to go this long, podcast wise. I mean, I don't know how long this has been so far, but it feels like it's been a decent bit. But yeah, I mean, to wrap it up, I think big picture, what's my goal here is, with this podcast, I would say just kind of figuring everything out. I think I just wanted to treat this as I treated my running in that marathon plan, is just kind of get out there and just start running and then figure it out. So I'm going to try and commit myself to, let's say, 10 episodes by the end of the year. And then we'll see how that goes, because I think that gives me an episode every 2 weeks. But yeah, I think I also need to figure out how I'd operate interview-wise, because I have just this one mic. I could do some video like interviews through Zoom or something. But ideally, like, big picture, I guess I could put that also in my dreams, not to go on a little tangent, but having like a actual like podcast studio, and like where I can kind of like the traditional setup of like a successful podcast, where they have like mics and chairs and a room, and it's soundproof and everything. And hopefully the sound has been good on this one. But yeah, my goal is just kind of get those episodes going, and we'll see what it'll be like. This is going to be maybe a little bit of an adventure in the sense of like each episode will probably be quite different. This has just kind of been a foundational one that I hope kind of sets the tone and people can understand more about what this is about. And I guess this is more just like a self interview in the sense of like I want this to be, if someone's going to listen to a future episode, they listen to this first and they kind of understand me, and then they can see me interviewing other people or me going over specific topics and really diving deep into something and understanding my thinking. And also this can be a baseline. Like if I continue to do this, I can, like I said, I could maybe do once a year. I go back and do these same questions over and just kind of look through them and answer them, and then I can kind of see them change and progression. But yeah, in conclusion, I guess this will be my little outro. We'll figure it out.